With the Advantech subfloor assembly, you can be sure that you're building a reputation on something stronger. And the best builders, well, they may always stand apart, but they never stand alone. So ask yourself, are you bringing your A game?
Hey, UnBuild podcast. I'm here with Dementia Pete.
Hey there.
I'm surprised you remembered who you were talking to.
It's like, oh, that's me. Hey, that's me. And I haven't come up with a good one for Jake, so we'll just say Jake. What's up, buddy?
Hello, hello.
So today we have a really special podcast. It's kind of like Jeopardy podcast because I have no clue what the answer is. I don't even know what the heck the question is.
Well,
So
I read a third of the question and went, "Oh, I'm giving this to Pete so that he can read it."
We'll give
I
it to
thought
Pete.
Pete would be very interested in this.
Dementia,
This is
because
the UnBuild podcast version of Stump the Chump.
and even if we don't figure it out, we just blame it on Dementia Pete.
We
right?
should note,
So that's our
if
out.
you would like to have your question answered on the podcast, we make no guarantees. Questions at unbuilditpodcast.com.
I mean, I think last month, what did we get? Like maybe about 50,000 emails where we had questions. Like it's out there, people. So if you want to be part of it,
Most of them
Fire
were
'em
about
up.
why are you doing this podcast?
why are you
do
guys?
realize-
Why don't you guys consider losing Pete?
Most
But
of them
ignore those.
were investment opportunities.
Yes, no, people wanting to write checks. They were just looking for the right address and right funding medium. So, anyways, a little music.
No, pass. I'm not gonna.
You were the one who wanted to.
I know,
do
but
the
you know, I
music.
had to pass it off because I forgot what the Jeopardy tune went. It was,
We'll put it in post. How about that?
all right, Peter, for $700.
So one of our new questions comes from Bill Bryce. And it
Bill
says,
Bryce, thank you, Bill.
I think that might be somebody else's question.
terrific.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
could be like be part
That's
of the
why you
podcast.
draw the line.
It's like
Holy
send
smokes,
your
this is not
email
going
and be
away.
part of the podcast.
Also,
day.
don't read the person's phone number.
Hey, I'm
that's
hosting
on
No,
this.
I was not
You guys
gonna
are
read his
really
phone
like
number.
I feel somewhat disrespected here with you when you two have a conversation when I'm trying to host.
Sorry.
Just so we're clear.
Here's the question.
Go.
Hey crew, long-time listener, first-time caller. Hey Steve, I've heard you talk about installing flangeless windows in respect to location of window in thick walls. Best in center 1/3, but possible in outer edge, and can save some material labor costs on exterior trim extensions if big overhangs or heavy water managed flashing systems. I think this is i.e. all four faces fully flashed with vapor open tape may not be the best option if you have minimal protection from soffits and overhangs. All right, there's a lot that follows this, but we're going to start to try to decode exactly what that meant.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the way we did it in my house.
That's like a hand grenade, right? That's not a sniper.
I've
of a
heard Steve
question.
say this,
This
so now
is-
we're gonna.
Yeah, I heard Steve say this, and then he rattled off like about 15 different concepts,
well,
and then homogenized them into this
We're
one
going to start
idea.
with when you install a flangeless window
Yes.
in a really deep wall.
Yes.
There are a lot of locations that you can place it in from the outside flush to the inside and
Yes.
everything in between. And so I guess he's wondering why it's best in the center third.
So those are what
Hold
are
on.
those?
Let's define thick wall.
Ooh.
At what point does this placement probably start to matter?
Okay, I would think anything in excess of a 2x6 wall, larger than a 2x6 wall, I would consider a thick wall.
Does-
so 2x8, 2x10, double wall truss,
Straw bale, 24
straw bale,
inches.
yeah, all that
Okay.
good stuff.
Does the size of the window matter?
Yes, very much so. And I was going to get into that until you rudely interrupted me and said, hey, before we talk about that, let's get a couple things straight. Yeah, I was
Okay.
about
Why?
to jump
Why
into
would
that.
why would
So,
it matter?
The smaller the window and the deeper the hole, the more risk you are at creating a microclimate, right? And I've seen this with Nathan. We were doing a house, we were doing a water test. It was the winter time, and we were climbing up the stairs. These were thick brick masonry bearing walls, and the wall was probably something like 18 inches thick. the windows were literally probably like 14 inches wide, 28 inches tall, but they were out near the outer edge. So they were recessed in that hole, probably to face a wall to, or face of plaster to face of glass was probably on the order of like 14 inches.
So they're flush to the outside.
They're nearly flush to
Yep.
the outside.
Yep.
But yes, for all intents and purposes, they were in the outside third. And because of that, you're not going to, like, air's not smart enough to go up and go into that opening
just
and then
planes.
come out. It just planes out in
Yep.
front of it. And so as we're walking up the stairs, all of these windows were frosted because they had moisture. It created a little microclimate. Now, you wouldn't have that problem if that window was 3 or 3.5 feet wide and 6 foot tall, because you would get, it wouldn't have the ability to plane by it as easy. And some of it you would get mixing with that air inside that window well.
You also might not have that problem on that same size window and that same size wall had it not been in a stairwell as well.
Yeah, the stairwell.
The
It's not like there's
HVAC in a
vents or
stairwell
anything
is
underneath it.
Traditionally garbage.
Yeah.
And somewhat climate dependent, right?
Sure.
And somewhat climate dependent. Yes. So where does it go in the third? Was that the first question that we asked?
Yeah.
Before Jake took us on this roundabout, my walkabout.
Just want to cover everything.
It's
We
a
got 30
verbal
minutes.
walkabout.
We got to fill the time somehow.
I know. Well, but you forced me to
Yeah.
lose my train of thought. Now I'm working like Dementia Pete.
Well,
That's a
and
really good name, too, by
actually,
the
this
way.
It
question,
is.
you can install flanged windows in really deep walls too,
Yes.
right?
And the effect
it's
would
not
be the same.
specific to flangeless, but more often there's a lot
Yeah,
more
it
freedom
happens.
with flangeless windows.
Yeah. But if you look at the, what are those, the isotherm drawings where they have all the pretty colors kind of banded? And if you look at window placement
Yeah.
versus
Yep.
those drawings, it's going to suggest that the middle third is, from a thermal perspective, that's the sweet spot of putting it in that window open.
And can we look at that as like, well, that's the position where it's challenged the least from both sides, and it is also protected the most from both sides?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's one of those things where I would argue thermally it's the right spot. But if we put the window out at the face, that's probably the easiest to flash and get right? Because anytime I bend one of the control layers, that's when I'm usually asking for trouble.
Yeah.
So first of all, it depends, and this is, I think, where a lot of confusion comes in. Just because you're installing the window on the outside doesn't mean that's where the weather-resistant barrier is, right? If it's got 4 inches of foam on the outside, the weather-resistant barrier could be 4 inches deep into the wall.
Yes.
So it's not just where the window gets installed; it's where the window gets installed in relationship to the plane of the weather-resistant barrier. That's
Where is our prevention layer in our water management system, right? What's the line that says this is the no-go line?
And I
Water
think this-
doesn't get past that.
This fellow is saying if you don't have good protection from overhangs above,
Right.
then maybe you want to set the water in to shelter it because it's not getting much
Well, then all
deflection.
you're doing is you're just displacing the concept of overhang to
To
each
the
of the
opening.
individual heads of window, right? So I'm creating a pseudo overhang by each of the window heads.
But I think you and I agree that every time you install a window that's not in the same plane as the weather-resistant barrier, you really complicate the flashing connections
It's
between
challenged.
the windows.
Yeah, it's challenged
harder.
because you could pull it in and say, okay, my window's more protected, but now I've exposed the sill, right? And now I have to make sure the sill is
And now I have to drag head, jam, and sill flashings in and out of the opening.
yes, and take that weather-resistant barrier and fold it basically into the opening.
Okay, I'm not sure we answered his first question, but I'm not sure we really could answer it fully. But the next part of this is, can you detail a heavily water-managed system for a flangeless window on the outer edge of the opening?
Yes.
And I would say
That was the answer I was thinking of. Yep.
Of course you can.
Next
Yeah, of
Of
question.
course you can.
Yeah.
It's
And-
the
I mean,
same
we've-
thing as a
we've done it a
flanged
number of times.
window,
Yep.
just without the flange. We just create the flange with a piece of tape.
And I don't know if you remember it, but we have that one where we took the Sega tape, we attached it to the window, and then the window is flush with our rain screen system like we do, But before we attach it to the wood furring, we use their little like spatula tool and tuck it in that
Drove it
space.
in.
So you get like a vertical chase between the window and that, but it's all in the tape.
Yep.
And so then it goes down and basically has the ability to drain. So it takes a little something, you know. Windows are one of those things, and it's interesting because when I leave here and before I fly home, I'm actually going to Iowa to install a bunch of windows because with builders, I like to do it. It's a way I get to learn, but also...
Oh, I assumed it was a punishment that you
were
were going
to
to
Iowa
Iowa to install windows.
No, because you know what? You know the thing to look forward to, and I don't know, I didn't do it the last time I was there, but there's a restaurant that has a 96er across the street from the hotel.
A 96er.
Yeah, 96-ounce steak challenge.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise known as most of the cow.
Yeah. I've done 48 and I've done 72. I've never done 96. So
I am going to be watching Instagram
I don't know
the
if
rest
Holly
of
know
this
about
week.
this?
Well, she was with me when I did the 48. And she couldn't believe it. The steak was literally, it was a sirloin strip. It was like a brick. It was, yeah. But anyways.
Okay,
Off
so...
of that. But when it comes to windows, the thing that I think is really interesting is it's really where you have to have a decent understanding of your talent, right?
Yes. Yes.
Like you can't just if I'm doing a job and it's a 8,000 square foot house and we're putting in a $200,000 macro win package and the guy pulls up and he's like, oh yeah, we do siding, but they're going to have us throw the windows in too.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a little
They're
worried.
going to throw the windows in.
I'm kind of a little worried, but Jake's crew.
We do concrete and windows.
Yeah, you know, yeah, we do concrete windows.
In that order?
Vinyl siding, decks, roofing.
We haul trash.
We do it all. One stop.
I'm picturing one specific person that I know when I say all
Listen,
those
I'm
jokes.
not. That's not. Jackson Andrews doesn't do all of those.
He does
things.
not. They do most of
They
it.
do most of them, but he doesn't
Well,
do all
too.
of
They do
them.
most
They
of it
do
well,
it very
too.
well. He is.
Fairness.
I've never seen anybody take out the garbage better than him. But that plays a role, and there's people I know that are like, damn, that is perfect, and then there's guys that, and we've all have seen pictures of horrific window installations that people claim to be, oh yeah, I can do this, and it's like,
Yeah, and every time you ask an experienced crew to do a new way of installing a window and flashing it, man, you're going to have to bring diplomacy as well as a spray rack, because I was working on a project recently, really complicated window installations, and I had to sort of talk the crew into, yeah, this is how it's going to work, and they really didn't want to switch the way that they are used to installing those windows.
Not to take the crew that he was talking to's side, just for our listeners, were you wearing sandals and socks when you were explaining these details to them, like a true Vermonter, or did you have on work tennis shoes?
I had on a fog hat with a big brim, and I had boots on. We were going to do a. We actually took a hose and put it in front of.
it was
the
a
blower.
hot sunny day, by the way. He just put his boots
And
on
we
for.
used the blower door to
Depressurize?
we drove water past the we got water from a hose spraying right in front of a blower door, so we were blasting the water right into the window installation, because we weren't in a position to depressurize the building from the inside.
Okay, so just
I have a video on that. I think I'm going to connect it to this podcast.
okay.
As a resource.
Procedurally, we are asking for like, how do you actually do this? When you and I have done this, and I mentally went through this, I believe we have 3 houses under construction that all have basically the same detail, some with liquid, some with tape. They're all rain screen assembly houses, and we've pushed the window to the face of the rain screen.
Yes.
And that means that the rain screen that encompasses the rough opening has to actually be included in your waterproofing. So the waterproofing membrane goes from our, in this instance, zip R sheathing across our batten strips for our rain screen and into the rough opening,
Yes.
so that our WRB actually punches out right when it gets to the window.
Really?
And then the window is faced flush with the batten strips that are our rain screen. And then we're taping or creating our flanged window from the face of the window to the face of the batten strip. And then we have head flashings and all that kind of normal stuff. But effectively, all we've done is put a little bump in the wall. And the first time I had a carpenter challenge me on it, I said, this is the same as if we were doing an exterior installation and we were ringing the opening with 2x4.
Yeah.
It's just we're doing it with 3/8 plywood instead of 2x4. And so, like, yeah, mentally it's challenging when you look at it with just the batten strips. But if there were, you know, if we're using a thermal buck or a 2x4 buck of some sort, or even just a plywood buck to be able to push our windows out to the outside of a exterior installation, it's the same detail.
So this guy goes on to say, can you talk about the best detail for an effective and highly durable flashing detail for minimalist vertical TNG and minimum to no exterior trim? So this is a completely flush to the cladding installation.
Yeah, so you probably don't end up flush to the cladding. You probably just end up omitting the trim, right? So in the assembly that I just described, if you pull that picture frame of trim off and you run a cladding that is vertical over to the edge of the window, same thing, and it works. And that you don't want it perfectly flush because aesthetically it's never going to actually be perfectly flush. You're better off to have that little reveal and that reveal be considered and clean, right?
Yeah, I mean, pushing the window out certainly it solves some issues, it creates others. But I think the best answer I could give to the last part of his question is, if you treat the rain screen like a two-stage joint and you make that rain screen as big as you possibly can, like on the order of 3/4 of an inch with, you know, furring strips or 1 by underneath it, the bigger I make that, the more saving grace I think you have, because you have, you know, does 3/8 strain? Yes. Does a 1/4 inch strain? Yes. But the 3/4 inch has a very large pressure drop where nothing that makes it to the backside of that wood is going to make its way to the zip. If it gets in there, it's going to fall in that large drainage space. So your saving grace is by having this cavernous drainage space behind it, right?
Well,
so it's basically, if we looked at our water management and we talked about mitigation, this is like a very high level of mitigation by having a big space back there.
And he's talking about a vertical cladding, so you just do 2 layers of 3/4 then, right?
You could do two
you do
layers.
a vertical layer of
Yes.
3/4 attached
so-
to the studs.
Or you do it on like
goes
a
on.
Benjamin Obdike.
There's more.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more.
How would you flash the sill and siding below the window?
Was there actually more to the question,
Sorry.
or did your dementia set in and you had to?
Are we
You
reading
didn't
the
realize, and we're reading the beginning again.
You know, you guys are going to get sued by a lot of people by constantly making fun of
Not if they don't remember it.
Not if they don't remember. What? Rose.
his specific
Rose.
context is
I didn't
zip
even get
R6, climate zone 6A. So he's thinking about horizontal core event and installing the window, so there's a minimal need for window jamb extensions, trim, or sill material.
Yes. That's why we do it with him, is that and I'm not beating up on the Midwestern redneck, take the wheels off your trailer market. No, I'm just teasing.
I'll have you know that I spent 2 weeks with my family driving from San Francisco to Portland, Oregon over the summer, and I believe that part of the country is supporting the mobile home industry way more than where I live.
There was a joke of a house. Remember that house whenever we would drive up to your house from Route 2, we'd go by that one, like it was zip in Tyvek for about 12 or 15 years.
He finally did use furring strips and clad the house. He did. So he moved to a new level of
yeah.
Okay.
But moving it all out, yes, it does save, because those exterior extension jams are costly. That's why we don't do it on your projects, is just because the budget warrants, hey, if we can just do 4 pieces of wood for trim on the outside instead of 8 pieces, it saves us time, money, and effort.
So this is another interesting part of the question, which is, how do you address the same situation for a no flange window? My gut goes to metal exterior sill flashing. So what he's saying is that if you don't have details around the window and you're bringing your cladding right up to the opening end to the window installation, do you need to do an exterior metal sill as part of your water management and/or cosmetic covering of the way that the opening relates to the bottom of the
How
window.
it terminates at the sill.
How it terminates at the sill.
I think aesthetically you probably need to.
Yeah, I mean, you need to put something there, but if you're doing a flangeless window, all the flangeless windows, I don't know if he's aware of it, but you do have the option to get a metal sill from the manufacturer. That there is a very dedicated lip on the face of the window, and that flange tucks up and gets attached. And so you have this Z flashing that would then come out and go over your cladding system.
But-
Which is popular because in Europe because of
because it's all
walls.
masonry and such, so they want to add the sill to the window.
But I know this happens a lot, that we take a metal sill detail, which is largely cosmetic and a closure for keeping out ultraviolet light and bugs, but that is not necessarily part of the dedicated flashing system where it meets the WRB. In other words, they treat that exterior sill as the primary water management system, and that's a good way to screw up.
Oh yeah, I would never trust that. It's more of a covering. So are we near the end? Like, can I throw a somewhat of a summary statement at him?
I just want to say I look forward to your summary statement, but this guy has an interesting way of closing his email. So go ahead.
I want to do I almost want to get up and pace like a lawyer and do a closing argument. But the reality is, and I think you touched on it, Jake, you should be able to install the window and then spray it down and no water should get in, and then hang the cladding on a 3/4 inch airspace in front of that. And what the 3/4 inch space is doing, it's just mitigating the amount of water that the actual waterproofing system sees. So, it's screening the water. So instead of that, your waterproofing seeing 100% of the water, it's now seeing 5% of the water.
Sorry. I have to.
Go ahead.
I have
when
to.
you guys verbally
I have
argue.
to piggyback on that.
Ooh.
This is one of the first things that I understood in building science 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that my WRB was what I was relying on to be waterproof and not my cladding. And the reason it came so easy to me was my use of the Schluter tile waterproofing system. And the first time that I went to one of their trainings, they had a display, and I was talking to one of the reps, and he was explaining how tile and grout are like 80% to 90% waterproof. He was like, and then after they cracked, they're not.
That's right.
So you can't just rely on them to be your barrier. You have to have a barrier that's waterproof before tile and grout go on. And that was like an eye-opening thing for me the first time that I saw a zip system, because I was like, oh, it is actually watertight. Like, I'm not going to worry about it.
So it's funny that we were cutting each other off, because what I was going to say is, as a carpenter, I always thought that I should stop the water and connect it to something wherever I could. If it was in the flashing system, great. If it was in the cladding, great. And I had all these discontinuities, right? So I totally agree with you that it was a huge aha moment. Like, no, the cladding's primary role is not to be the single line of defense against water. And that was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that. And
Cladding's there to protect the WRB.
I actually got, I won't say an argument, but we did get into a little
Shoving match.
shove, but it was a nationally recognized industry professional that was starting to talk about caulking like all of the siding. And I said, well, what happens when water gets behind there? And he said, well, that's why we caulk. And I was like, boy, you are totally missing the point there, my friend.
Can we play a guessing game to see if we can figure out who this person that was speaking was?
So here's how this fellow, and I don't,
It wasn't Matt,
why
was
he
it?
might do this.
No, it wasn't that.
So he closes by saying, thanks. And as a token of my gratitude, I'll leave you with a bad joke.
See, you think you guys always laugh at me when I did my jokes, but people appreciate them.
Isn't that what you're going for?
He called
Us
it a
laughing?
bad joke, Steve. The
Who
operative thing
cares? Who cares? The fact that he commented. Go through the 50,000 emails we get in there and find one that references something you said. No, they don't care. They want to hear bad jokes. It's called entertainment theater.
This is the problem.
called
Recognition
entertainment.
is the first step, Steve.
Hey, Dementia Pete, I get it.
Where does the king put his armies?
Oh, I know this one.
I don't
It
know.
is so stupid. I love this one. In his sleeveys.
There you go. An armies and his sleeveeves.
I don't get it.
I don't get it, he says.
You have to unbuild the
I
joke,
get-
Steve. It's
I-
a lot like
I
what we do about buildings.
I know.
Okay. That's a wrap on flangeless window installations
With our good friend
with our
Ian.
good.
Ian. No, it's
No,
not Ian.
it's Bill
Brian.
Bryce.
Bill Bryce.
Oh, it's Ian Heiss. Is it Heiss? H-E.
I think we'd be better off to
dimension
not
is-
give people's last names.
Ian
yeah,
H.
yeah.
Hey, if they give our if that's
Ah.
names, that's
No,
a
hey,
full-
whatever you want to do.
Okay,
You
just
wanna go
forget
to
all that.
jail,
It's
whatever.
just Ian.
Let's call him Jim.
There we go.
Everybody's Jim.
Okay.
If you're not one of us three, you're Jim.
As we
Jim
said, as we said earlier, if you would like to have your question answered by the three of us,
How can we find a place where we can join the 50,000 people that write in?
our email is questions@unbuilditpodcast.com. I will say we try to answer most of them as they come in. I will also say that you're more likely to get Pete to answer them for you because Pete is more diligent with his email than Steve and I. And I enjoy reading Pete's answers to your questions too because sometimes I just wait and I
But-
go, yeah, me too. I agree with Pete.
A 20 attached to the questionnaire will get my attention. And
It will.
possibly get you on the podcast,
Exactly.
Jim.
Thank you for listening today. If you're not subscribed on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you already listen to, please go and do so. By you subscribing, that helps the algorithm. That helps other people find us.
Is it true that there's a new place to find us?
There is a brand new place. That's where I was headed. There is a brand new place that you can find the podcast. We are now part of the Build Show Network, which Steve and I already are part of the Build Show Network. So we're welcoming Pete to the Build Show Network now. And in doing so, you can get the video of the podcast on Build Show Network as well. If you click on the little hamburger
Live
menu
from the studio.
and find podcast, you'll be able to find us.
Cool. I
Till
learn
next-
something new every day.
Until next time, thanks
But
for
hey,
watching.
no, to mention Pete, like it could be the same thing every day. It just appears to be new.
I'm okay with
I
that.
don't know where this adjective to my name came from, but
I don't know. Hey, goodbye, y'all.
so long.
Have a good day.